everyone. Welcome to the fall edition of the seasonal seminar series where we discuss a variety of stormwater and sustainability related topics. My name is Erin Oxenford and I am the city's sustainability planner, and with me today is Tiffany Wright, the city's watershed manager. Today, our chat will be broken into two parts. First, we're going to discuss proper tree planting, care, and maintenance, and then we will move into a discussion on fall lawn care. Sprinkled in, you'll hear some about our Green Bowie programs as well as a few questions from our residents. But first, let's start off with tree planting. So fall is a really great time to plant trees. Tiffany, could you just discuss a little bit more about why?
Yeah, of course. So fall is a fantastic time to plant trees. What you are doing is planting the tree when it's dormant so that it's able to spend time getting roots into the ground and getting really established and well anchored into the soil before it has to start putting energy into the above ground things like flowers and leaves and fruits and things. So it gives it, the winter and the spring to get really established before it has to start dealing with the really hot summer weather.
Totally makes sense. And while we're talking about tree planting, I think now would be a great time to talk about the Plant One Tree on Us program. So this program is a really great program to help residents get a native tree of their choosing planted in their yard by a professional at no cost. This process is really simple. All you have to do is head on over to cityofbowie.org/POTOU and submit a request today to have your tree planted. But what if somebody wants to plant a tree themselves? How would they do that to make sure that the tree isn't harmed by the colder temperatures or the snow?
Yeah, so I think the important thing is that the tree is mulched and watered before we launch into the winter months. And I guess if we step back a little bit, we really need to think about the type of tree we choose and where we choose to plant it. So there are a number of things to consider when you are deciding to plant a tree. So the first thing under species selection, you want to think about the purpose of it. So maybe you've got kids and you want them to be able to climb trees and, like I did when I was little. Or maybe you want really pretty fall foliage in your yard. So think about the purpose of the tree and the aesthetics. Consider any diseases that the species might have. So say Dutch elm disease or emerald ash borer that gets the ash trees. So be sure that you consider that, and also the maintenance. So if you don't want to rake leaves, maybe you get an evergreen tree. And then site selection. So there is a Right Tree, Right Place program that you'll find online, and we have a little bit of information on our website. But you need to look at your utilities. So certainly overhead power lines, but also underground utilities. So you have to call 811. So Miss Utility in Maryland is required before you dig to call 811. They will come and locate all of your underground utilities and mark them. Remember that you need space for the tree. So it's going to grow and you want to make sure that it's not too close to your driveway or your house. And then the last thing about site selection is what is the drainage? So some trees like drier soil, some like wetter soil. Just keep that in mind. And then this is where I think the winter kind of comes in, is we want to make sure that we plant it properly. There are a few things you need to think about. So you need to be careful how you dig the hole, that it's not too big or too small. You also want to make sure when you fill the hole with soil and say some soil amendments that you aren't compacting it, that you're not overfilling it. And then you want to mulch it correctly and then water it. And so it should be good to go for the winter. Yeah.
That was a really good overview, Tiffany. And quickly, while you were going through that, I heard you say mulch the tree correctly. So are you saying you could mulch it incorrectly?
I am saying that, yes. So if we are driving around and we see a tree with big pile of mulch at the bottom, that is not good for the tree. It's quite detrimental in the long run. The tree and the bark need oxygen, and the roots need oxygen. So by having that big pile of mulch there, you can get insects and diseases, mold, rot, and you can even get problems with roots.
Oh, wow. And now that you're bringing that up, I actually think I've seen them before, and a resident reached out to me about the trees along Mitchellville Road. Mm-hmm. Yep. I'm wondering, can the city just go in and take out some of the mulch to fix it, or is that not possible?
Yeah, so it kind of depends. I will say that we have our community forester who we've talked to about this, and they're on top of it. With respect to those trees. So, but at home, like you want to be careful that you don't cause problems with the roots. So the roots can circle, they can grow in circles, and they can choke the tree. It's called girdling roots. And so eventually the tree it'll die. I mean, the tree will die. So just be very careful that you mulch it following the 3-3-3 rule, which is 3 inches deep of mulch, 3 inches or farther from the trunk, and go out at least 3 feet.
That's a great tip. And it sounds like this can be pretty severe to the tree. How long do you think the tree can survive with a mulch volcano around it?
So, I mean, sadly, I think it's a very slow death for these trees to suffocate. Typically, you don't have more than 10 years. It depends on how healthy the tree was, if it was planted properly, following the techniques we talked about earlier. So definitely, if you can get out there now and fix it, you should be good to go. Yeah, just keep an eye on the roots.
All right. So far we've talked a lot about trees, and I'm wondering, maybe if somebody doesn't want a tree or they can't have a tree, could you recommend any specific types of shrubs that people could plant in the fall?
Sure, absolutely. So there are a number of native shrubs and perennials, and some of those, the Home and Garden Information Center. So that's a program through the University of Maryland Extension, and they have a lot of resources on their website. But there are some native hydrangea bushes, or there are native viburnum, spice bush, chokeberry. So there are really a lot of options if you don't want to go the tree route. I will say that I have mentioned native a couple of times, and I just want to clarify that it's possible to, plant a non-native species and not have a problem, but you do not want to plant an invasive non-native. So for example, English ivy, that is a really tough vine, and it will kill your tree eventually. It will kill everything growing around it. So be sure when you choose your plant that it's not invasive, and preferably natives. So there are wildlife benefits, like places to raise young, food, and things like that.
All right, thanks, Tiffany. That was a really great overview of trees. And now I feel like we can jump into fall lawn care. So would you have any tips that you can give people when it comes to lawn care in the fall?
I sure do. So the biggest thing probably is leaves. So leaves fall off the trees in the fall, and we've got them covering our yards. And the easiest thing to do is just run your mower over them. So it'll chop them up, it'll leave them right in place, and you'll get a really good, like a soil amendment, almost like a natural mulch. Just be sure that you don't leave the leaves whole, because you don't want to block sunlight and oxygen and water from getting to the grass and the critters in the soil.
Definitely. And also when it comes to leaves, people don't forget about composting. Because fall leaves can be a really great addition to your compost pile. You can even save your leaves to continue adding them to your compost throughout the winter. And for more information, people can visit citybowie.org/compost, and you can read more about the compost bins that the city actually sells at City Hall for $20.
And I will say, I forgot to mention our city curbside leaf collection, which is a great service that we offer. So cityofbowie.org/leaf collection, and they will come to your house and vacuum the leaves up. So when you put them out, when you rake your leaves, make sure that you don't put them on the road or the sidewalk. We don't want a safety hazard. So just make sure that they're on your grass up by the edge of the road. And and you'll find the schedule online.
Definitely, that's a really great resource. So now, let's say at this point, we've mulched the leaves on our yard and we have properly mulched our trees. Properly. Are there any other tasks that you can think of that people might need to be aware of when it comes to fall lawn care?
So I guess a couple things come to mind. With trees and perennials, you want to be sure that you kind of cut them back. So you may need to prune your tree, like do a decent cut on it, but definitely remove any dead limbs. If you have any landscape beds with annuals in them, just be sure to pull them up, because they're gone. So whatever you do, make sure that everything is dormant. So you don't want to prune a tree or remove dead limbs while a tree is still sort of actively growing. You don't want to cause any damage to it. So grass, a lot of people have grass, right? So you need to continue mowing the grass until the first frost. And on the last mow of the season, be sure to leave put your mower height up a little bit, so that you're leaving maybe 4 inches of grass, for a similar reason to the perennials, so that soil critters can survive. And if you have any bare spots on the yard, this is where my stormwater stuff comes in, be sure to reseed them. So we don't want dirt running off to the road and into the storm drains and streams. And I guess Lawn equipment is maybe one more thing I was thinking about. So you may need to service your lawn equipment. I will say that you should definitely follow your manufacturer's guidelines. Once upon a time, I think people would drain the gas from their lawnmowers, but now you might just be able to add it like a stabilizer, and just make sure that it's serviced and ready to go, for the spring.
Definitely. And speaking of lawn care, residents can also take advantage of our electric lawn care rebate program year-round. So this is a great opportunity for residents to switch from gas to electric-powered mowers, leaf blowers, hedge trimmers, and weed whackers. And you can bring your proof of residency and payment to City Hall to receive your rebate.
And then one more thing I did want to mention is landscape beds. So I talked a little bit about perennials, but if you have a full landscape bed, or better yet, a pollinator garden, which would be very exciting, just make sure that if you do chop up your leaves, maybe you can put some of the leaves down there for the soil. And if you want to check and make sure that there are no woody volunteers, so like a bird hasn't dropped a tree seed somewhere and you're growing, a maple tree right up against your house. And then if you don't have a pollinator garden, this is really a great time to start one. So if you don't have to remove a lot of grass, you can just put cardboard and newspaper down, maybe some mulch on top of it, or if you have access to wood chips. We've done this at one of our stormwater ponds where we recently had a work day for folks to come in and spread wood chips. So we're going to kill the grass, we're going to condition the soil, and then we'll be ready to plant by mid-May, which incidentally is when you'll have the best species availability. Everybody thinks about planting in the spring, so that's when homeowners have the best shot at getting what they're looking for their garden. And the Home and Garden Information Center has information on this. Also, the Prince George's County Audubon Society has a habitat advisor program, and it's great. They'll come to your house. You can set an appointment with them. They can do it virtually, or they can come over and sort of walk your yard and show you things that you can do to create pollinator habitat.
Those were a lot of great resources, Tiffany. Now, before we get into resident questions, I have one final question for you. I've heard some conflicting evidence about fertilizing your yard in the fall, and I'm wondering if you could just settle the debate for us.
I will try. So, this is certainly another thing where you may want to consult a professional, but typically we want to fertilize when the plant is growing. So that's not the fall. And in fact, in Maryland, there is a blackout on homeowner applied fertilizer. Between November 15 and March 15, you can't put anything on your lawn. If you have a professional that handles your lawn maintenance, though, and they're licensed by the state, they can. But typically spring is a better time to fertilize. Just make sure you don't do it before it's going to rain, because we talked about stormwater, which is my thing, and we don't want excess fertilizer running off into streets and storm drains.
Definitely not. And I think now would be a good time to move into our resident questions.
Yeah.
So we had one resident write in. Their question is, I like bright red mulch, but my neighbor says that it's not good for the tree. Is that true?
So it depends. I know I keep saying that, but it does kind of depend. So if you are purchasing a colored mulch that is certified by the Mulch and Soil Council, you know that it's safe. Sometimes colored mulch is made from recycled wood, so it could be a door from a house that had paint on it, or it could be a pallet, like a wooden pallet. So by purchasing this from this council where they've done the work to make sure that the mulch is safe, you're good to go. Ideally, you would use a natural shredded hardwood organic mulch. That's really the best. We want to mimic nature. I understand if people have, aesthetic preferences, that's fine. Just make sure if you're not going to use the natural stuff that you look for the certified bags.
All right. And then one last question. Someone asked about alternatives to just regular grass. First of all, is it okay to use different types of ground cover? And if so, could you recommend any specific types?
Again, here, I guess it depends on your yard. There are a lot of options. I've seen clover yards. Some people don't like clover. I'm a fan. But there are certainly native grasses in addition to ground covers like clover or phlox or sedums. Again, the Home and Garden Information Center would be a great resource to look at for that. Yeah.
All right, and I think that wraps up our fall seasonal seminar. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to visit our website with any questions or contact Tiffany or myself. Thank you so much for tuning in, and to stay up to date, be sure to subscribe to the Green Bowie e-newsletter and follow the new Green Bowie Instagram at green_Bowie. We look forward to seeing you for the final edition of the seasonal seminar series at the winter solstice on December 21st.